Hey guys, Jehuty here with another Tekken 7 video, and today we're tackling yellow ranks. More specifically, I've compiled my top 5 tips to get out of yellow ranks, and if you haven't watched my top 5 tips on how to get out of green ranks, I would recommend you watch that. I'm linking it right here because it builds on one another. That knowledge is still worthwhile. And yeah, if there's a specific place you want to skip to, I've left timestamps in the description so you can skip to those or come back and watch them again, easy. So then, without further ado, let's get into it. So first up is matchup knowledge. Now this is a very important point because it follows you throughout all the ranks, how you progress all the time. There's always more knowledge to be added in terms of characters and their specific ways of tackling them. You see, as you're focusing on your own game plan, it's also important to focus on the specific other characters and their specific quirks they can utilize in a match. So from now on, every match you look at the character you're facing and then you look at the top 2 to 3 things which you're getting hit by that character from. It can be a low, it can be a very quick mid or a far-reaching mid, it can be a setup, it can also be a frame trap. And then you just work on those to start off with. You don't try to do everything at once, and then gradually you'll get there. It can be like characters like Hwoarang who have a back 3 launcher which looks like it's safe on recovery because the animation looks kind of funny but it's actually launch punishable. It can also be these setups into forward 4 which then lead into backlash, so if you try to attack him right after that first attack you get hit as well. It can also be other characters such as Asuka who can set you up to attack them and then they parry you, and then you have to figure out these little things out. It could also be other characters like Xiaoyu who have that AOP stance, Art of Phoenix stance, which goes under all highs and some mids as well, and then you have to look for your attack which can knock them out of that. And then you also have other characters like Law with his flips, which are actually launch punishable. And then you also have his frame traps, which bait you into doing something and then he'll launch you after that. On my channel there are a couple of how to deal with certain character videos, and there will be more added as well, so you can look at those as well. And then the other thing you should be looking at is Snake Edge and other moves that function similarly. So the thing with Snake Edges is that there are very slow lows that on hit launch you for a full combo. Now the thing is, you see these very often in yellow ranks and even in the ranks above you, and these moves are launch punishable. So you just practice it with one character, like against Brian, so that you get the feel for it, and then you just have to memorize that these specific characters which you're seeing here all have something like a Snake Edge, and you just have to always make sure to block and launch punish them for it. Frame data goes hand in hand with matchup knowledge, and the earlier you start to incorporate it into your game plan, the better for you. Now, if you don't want to pay for the frame data DLC for one of the other reasons, there's a free alternative for you. rbnorway.org. These guys are really great. They've compiled all the frame data for moves on block and on hit. Now if you want more of an in-depth analysis of what frame data is, explained with all sorts of examples, I have a separate video in my Tekken 101 series on that. I'll link that in the description. But for this video's sake, I'm going to try to compile the most important information as briefly as possible. You see, in Tekken there are a couple of general rules with a few exceptions. And the first one being is that high attacks are mostly safe and have to be ducked to punish them. And then you have mid attacks, and these, unless they're like small attacks that are like weak or designed like that, they're actually punishable. And then we have low attacks, and for as much as I know, all low attacks are punishable. The first thing you want to focus on is actually knowing the frame data of your opponent's launchers and punishing their launchers. You see, in yellow ranks, a lot of people still throw out unsafe launchers. So the general rules apply here as well. High launchers, they're mostly safe on block, so you have to duck and punish them. And then you have mid attacks, or sorry, mid launchers, Some of them are safe on block, however most of them are going to be between -12 and -13. Of course, then you have the mid ones which have pushback, and those ones are the worst of all, because if you have a move that can bridge the gap, you can even launch punish them. In terms of punishing lows, try to keep it simple at first. You just want to look at your quickest while rising move, that is in many cases a while rising generic 4, and your launcher from while rising. So if it's a big low like a snake edge or a hell sweep and you block it and it staggers on block, launch it with the while rising launcher, and if it's anything else, just use your quickest while rising launcher. It's then later on that you can also utilize your other while rising moves, but at first you don't want to confuse yourself too much. Just use these two to start off with. So now let's talk about throws and throw breaks. But first up, sometimes in yellow ranks you come across people who don't want to break throws, so what they do is that they duck them, they predict and duck them. If you're that kind of person, please stop that right now, because if your opponent actually picks up on you doing this consistently, they can bait it out by going close towards you and then launching you. Of course, the other way around, that means that if you can predict that this is what they're going to do, they're going to duck, then you bait out a grab and then launch them for it. So, next up is how the throws have been simplified in Tekken 7. You see generic throws which are 1+3 and 2+4. What has happened with these is that they can either be broken with 1 or with 2, doesn't matter. Of course, when you see both hands coming out forward at the same time, that still has to be broken with 1+2 at the same time. And yes, that's the throw you're going to see most often in yellow ranks. However, certain characters have throws that look like these generic throws, which can be broken with 1 or with 2, but actually they need to be specifically broken with 1 or specifically broken with 2. So that means when you're looking at the throw and the left hand comes forward, only the left hand and the right one slightly behind, that means it has to be broken with 1. And then of course when it's the other way around and the right hand is coming out first, the left hand is a bit back, that needs to be broken with 2. And then of course when you see both hands coming out at the same time, at the same length, that has to be broken with 1+2. So to practice this, you want to go into practice mode and select a character with a complete throw game like Jin. And for instance, these are the 3 throws which I'm using to practice throw breaks. And you want to put all of these throws into the repeat action function. And then you want to practice breaking them. Believe it, at first this is very frustrating, but it takes time and you will eventually get there. Don't get frustrated. It's something you'll still need going up to orange ranks, red ranks, and even beyond that. So, apart from that, what you can also take away is that you can utilize 1+2 throws to your advantage, because in yellow ranks a lot of people don't know how to break these throws. Don't use it too much as a crutch, I'm just telling it to you. So the last 2 points are going to be relatively short. The first one here is players not blocking and punishing lows. So now and then what will happen is that you'll come across players that refuse to block low because they don't want to duck and get launch punished for it. So they've just decided that the risk of getting launched is bigger than eating the damage of the low. So they just don't block low. If you pick up on those kind of people, you know what to do. Make sure to start low poking them, maybe even risking those bigger low sweeps for more damage. But of course, if you're also in that category of not blocking lows and punishing them, and people catch up on that, you will also be on the receiving end. So keep that in mind. Make sure to always try your best to be blocking the lows. Most of the lows come out of strings in these ranks anyway, so you'll be able to see a pattern before the low comes anyway. So keep that in mind, and then yeah, just practice that. So the last point here is salt, and I believe it's one of the very important ones because it's going to follow you all the way till to the top of the ranks. You see, we can't always play good all the time, and because of that, we lose. And you know, sometimes we feel very annoyed because we lost more often, or we lost when we felt that we were better than the other person, but he cheesed us. And yeah, you feel a bit annoyed, and that's what we call salt. It's normal. Even the very good players experience this from time to time. You see, with fighting games, there's a clear-cut winner and there's a clear-cut loser. There is no middle ground. So of course, losing isn't really fun. Everybody wants to win, right? The problem with salt is when you let it consume you to the extent that it affects your gameplay. What I mean by that is that you are so hung up on the fact that you lost, or you were cheesed out, or what have it not, that you start to play worse. You start to get clipped by things you were not getting clipped by before. Certain gimmicks are working on you that didn't work before. And then of course, the result of all of that is that you start to get demoted. And before you know it, you get demoted 1, 2, 3, 4 times and you're back in green ranks. So how do we get our salt under control? Well, the first thing I advise is that you view every match as a learning experience. So what I mean by that is you go into a match and then maybe there's one specific string you want to duck and that's your goal for that match. Or you want to sidestep a specific move and launch punish it. Or maybe you want to see how good your throw break practice has been coming out versus a king or an armor king. There's always something you're doing, and therefore you always feel like you're progressing even if you're losing. The next thing I advise is that when it comes to matches, you do a best of 3. So in other words, you just revenge match twice, regardless of if you're winning most of them or losing most of them. Because if you're losing most of them, you're too focused later on winning versus this one guy that your dissatisfaction grows. Or if you're winning too much, you grow overconfident, and then the next person you're matched up against can easily destroy you, and then all of those happy feelings turn into negative feelings. And lastly, if your salt level is really high, I'd recommend you stop playing altogether for 2 to 3 hours. Go and do something that's not gaming related, like go outside or do something that's been pending in the house. If it's really bad, then I'd advise sleeping over it, coming back to the game the next day. Anyways, that does it for my top 5 tips on how to get out of yellow ranks. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you liked the video. I'd also like to know what you guys think in the comment section. Of course, what helps me the most is if you guys consider subscribing and of course sharing the video. And this is your boy Jehuty, and I'll see you on the next how to get out of orange ranks video.